And if you need it to charge, I can put my extension cord out maybe.
It will live. I like charge it to the base.
Alright. Alright, are you good? Or
We need to plug it, right? Yeah. Sorry about that. Oh, would you need a stand also?
yeah, we
No,
yeah,
I was talking about it. Sorry.
I'll do it.
Okay.
That's it, I'm safe. I'm gonna go to the back room.
I'm good.
Is anyone not ready?
Let me close this.
Okay.
I'm good now.
Okay.
Come, it's CEDA, the People's Tournament. Huddle around the hibachi. Let us not argue, but instead share our ideas. Let us share about death, about life after death, about the mind that's Desmond in 07. Metaphor can contribute to developing theology, integrating body and mind. Metaphors and active thought process brought about semantic notion. The hibachi metaphor is utilizing the idea of communal worth, the cold subject, enable discussion, sharing and learning, recurrent experiences become symbols, having the religious dimension, knowledge, source of metaphor with a warmth, the comfort, hibachi idea, the possibility of the food becoming warmth, metaphorized. Life after death is similar to cultural interpretations, influence, hibachi, which signifies warmth, is a powerful metaphor, leads us to constructing a teaching tool about life after death. Knowledge is connected to new knowledge, and in some way we suddenly see the link in thought, the poetic feeling of invoked by metaphor. This culture practice, a way of understanding hibachi group metaphor can introduce new life after death schema. We're not having a teaching tool in the Western sense, but manner of sharing ideas in the warm environment. There must be a metaphor in the process of deconstructing reality and institutionalized practice. Food cooked on hibachi charcoal has a specific nostalgic taste. Hibachi serves the family's central meeting place. People would gather around enjoying the warmth, the harmony prevailed. The people usually did not argue. Here the elders would tell a local ghost story. The immediate area around the hibachi was warm. Elsewhere is cold. What is hunger? What is suffering? Why? Questioned the monk. Dharma pertains to our inner world and our outer world. That's Dharma 22. Dharma's exposition of the laws pertaining to our inner world. The teachings of the Buddha believe nothing merely because you have been told, because it is tradition. The essence of Dharma is the eschewing of all evil, perfecting the good deeds, or purifying one's mind. Is strictly scientific technique. Modern psychology agrees. The new developments, relativity, quantum mechanics, the interconvertibility of matter and energy. Energy is a dynamic quantity, space, and time are shadows of independent reality. We do not have a direct sensory or even intuitive experience. Our perception of the world based on the common sense view of absolute space and time is an error. An experience in reality which demand transcendence of the senses. The relativistic physics of absolute Eastern sages gives scientific authority to the vision of ancient sages. The particles do not possess any intrinsic value. The electron does not have any objective properties independent of my mind. The philosophical implications of this principle are profound. It involves the comprehensive reality that is necessary to put some other mode of gathering knowledge. Contradictory views may emerge from the same reality, wisdom, life, and treating them as complementary. When appearances opulent to unending conflicts, bore hope that a complementary principle would find a place in education. All of these indicate the emergence of a new world which repudiates materialism. One such fundamental insight, egolessness, is the physical body creates illusion of individuality. 90% of the human body are replaced from atoms to varieties. We're all partners in the biodance. There is a need to develop a certain intuitive insights, living life in conformity to the universal law, the Dharma. And what is fiat? What is the political will that we cling to in the game we play? It's false. It's food porn. Instead, let us intimately write the recipe together. That's Barry and Randon and 5. Like cuisine and fine restaurants, the diamonds are intimately involved in the preparation of the cooking to help write the recipes and choose the ingredients. The difficulty experienced in disarmament rather than more complex than some is portrayed to get better preparation. The cooking process might ensure satisfaction next time. Looking for answers requires looking deeper for patterns or relying on explanations. Passion the term political will is problematic because it does little explain what actual reason nor does the comparison. Political will is instead better thought of as a shorthand term that should not be confused with a subject explanation. It merely indicates deeper, more scientific explanations to be uncovered. And debate is the game. The way we play is not simply a tool nor rely on extrinsic benefit. We want to play with our food. That's what you use at 6. Function center theories describe play as a tool. The function is only a subsequent effect derived from playing. It is not internal quality of the experience or any function center theory necessarily fails to explain why people play. Play is not undertaken to require some sort of extrinsic benefit. The essential function of the play is the modulation of experience. Play resists instrumental analysis. Players experience the primary phenomenon. Whatever functional benefits are derived from player often depend on the quality of the experience. It is only because the play grows in that it can be arguably enhanced. The player's health play is efficacious only to the extent that players are direct satisfaction from it. And just as cooking as a metaphor explains the shapes and norms of the community, so too does cooking influence disarmament. That's Barry and Random 5. The metaphor chronically describes the process of disarmament. The metaphor illustrates the contention of the central topic. To understand what it involved in the preparation of fine meals is necessary to look beyond simply the diet's expectation. Examine what goes in the kitchen, to what extent the working practice rules apply to disarmament, contributing to the parent's successful outcomes, developing the international norms. It's apparent that just like the restaurant kitchen, many other different dishes of the parent, it is clear that community practice exists in disarmament that leads to consistency and approach to the different subjects, and thus endorse the following recipe. The United States should disarm nuclear forces, and cooking as a practice is creative and valuable for sociality, kinship, the transformation of subjectivity, the affective significance of cooking enables resistance. That's England in 20. An intangible, omnipresent love who can build a family can are often chosen in queer communities, encompasses the larger rejection of kinship in the nuclear family. Food acts as a creative force to produce a new emotional ties central to the process of being together. Outside the Western models, food is a wider tool of sociality. Babies in the Bang people of the culture are not believed to be humans, rather raising a child as a process of familiar ourselves with a divine structure from the afterlife. The cooking and eating together has an affect of a communal force. The development of cooking food is labor reduced to justice as a disservice. Cooking holds significance something more enduring than its definition as only a form of reproductive labor. We must jump in the world and change the transformation of subjectivity and practice the language that pivotal to the process of cooking is by nature practice view with the ability to shift subjectivity. Cooking is a practice which transforms the inedible to delicious, sharing a meal in everyday experience into togetherness. The anticipation of shared experience of consuming, acknowledging that food and cooking is more than simply the fuel of capitalism. We've been to understand it as a form of resistance which carves out new ways of being together. Open for cross.
You good?
Yep.
I want to talk about the 1AC England card. It talks about chosen families. How does the app create chosen families within debate?
We would argue that just inviting anyone to the hibachi table, that's the form of choosing people, eating together. It doesn't have to be.
Yeah, and we think that you can obviously uninvite people if you don't like them. Like obviously
So
try
you
to put them
can.
together on the table.
So you can uninvite people if you don't like them.
Yeah, but we think that
Who
those-
uninvites? Wait, hang on. Who uninvites?
I think it's sort of democratic and that everyone has a say.
Wait. So everybody has a say about who gets uninvited.
Well,
Everybody has.
yeah, but everyone can make their own tables. We think that hibachi as a practice can be done not just at one big table, but everyone can.
Wait. Okay. So
together
you
in
create a
their
bunch of
homes.
little tables though.
Yeah.
And okay. So how does that create a chosen family?
Well, everyone can sit at their chosen family together.
Oh, sure. That makes sense. Okay. You say that you disarm nuclear forces. What are nuclear forces?
Well, we think that that's a sort of reductive
No,
way.
it's not. You affirm
think
it.
about
You
things.
say you disarm nuclear forces.
We
What
think
are
it's
nuclear
reductive to
forces?
think about things
Girl,
in
that's
terms
not
of.
what I'm asking. You affirmed
Well,
an
hold on.
advocacy statement. What does
We think
it
it's
mean?
reductive. We think the question's reductive because the definition of whether or not what nuclear forces isn't really relevant.
I
to our
kind of disagree
original
because
process.
you actually affirmed it explicitly.
Yeah, what do
Yeah,
you
we
mean
think
by
that the way we should think of meaning and knowledge, etc., should not be in a sort of Western sense that tries to
No,
calculate
that's
what
not
the
the
meaning
question.
of
Wait,
things is.
hang on. Wait,
Our
what's
evidence
Western
defines
about
Zen.
asking? What is Western about
Our
asking?
evidence defines Zen ways of knowing and intuition, which are not premised on logic, but instead premised on ways of intuiting things beyond like the things like definitions, etc. And those are our
So
critiques
you
of top down.
intuit things.
Okay, so if it is bad to decide what things should mean, why is it good for us to negate the app? What does the judge do in this debate?
So the role of the negative in this debate is to share ideas. We think that competition shouldn't overdetermine the space. We think that we should engage in other practices like communal practices, and we think that those things should take precedent above competition in the debate.
Wait, so how does the judge decide who won then?
So the judge decides who won based on whatever idea is competitive with other ideas, etc. But we think that
How do you
that
decide
process
an
is not
But
mutually
you just
exclusive.
said competition's bad. So how do you
We
decide?
did not
that
say
it-
competition bad. We
Wait.
said prioritizing competition above
Okay.
all else is bad.
If determining the meaning of things is bad, how does
We
the
did not
judge-
say determining the meaning of things is straight up bad. Our critique of meaning and definitions is that it occludes Eastern understandings of knowledge, which are premised on
Sorry, so, like,
So how does the judge decide what conversations or ideas that are proposed
the
are
judge should intuit those things.
What does that mean?
Okay.
Judge intuition will roll the ballot and roll the judge arguments in the 2AC, 1AR, and 2AR, but we think that intuition is a form of knowledge production and epistemology where you align with epistemologies that you think are valuable.
Yeah.
So in this debate, if Jefferson thinks our epistemology is valuable, if cooking is valuable, if Buddhism is valuable, then he votes out.
Okay, I'm sending it out. It's 1 in a case. It's Let me know whenever it's good.
Good.
You know, perfect. So you were both good, right?
Yep.
Okay. The one he sees horizontal heuristic is powerless in the face of state repression, relying on ad hoc structures that trust shared identity affinity to cohere their practical as a stage to inject repressive forces along those same lines will the effective organization built around democratic centralized procedures and clear structures of accountability can fight state destruction as me all 22 the communist movement operating under conditions of repression with the takeaway so far as an infiltrate study groups and mutual aid collectives to fight back radicals use security culture for rooting out state agents turning practices and cultural norms security practices for development underground work attempts to translate into above ground based building create fiction state repression remains constant threat agents crash parties sever ties and create collective forensics repressive state apparatus capable of complexity an equally adaptive response. It's not some spy game security is about good politics and every instance of infiltrates the state has taken advantage of movements through political failures leveraging them to disrupt organizing the primary solution is not some special tool but resilient organizations that can go up in flames because of ill intent treating comments like enemies hands the state tool sabotage revolutionary movements aiding profit towards almost always no bad faith disagreements to generate organizational breakdown rate system sexism and other repression compound leaders are able to form collective with the oppressed men solidarity insulated with the other from criticism while Sugar Fed was insulated by literature collecting childhood friends who defended him relying on the bond between men and instigating the murder of Black Panther before testifying as the leader of the Common Ground Collective. Darby assaulted female volunteers, alienating women, black men. Agents were able to take advantage of inspiration, self-reinforcing collective movements were driven to the ground. Organizing maximum can help us navigate. Leaders should always work to replace themselves. Cadres who should invest in mentoring or requires a permanent commitment to building mass leadership among the oppressed, dispersing placement planning for cadres to regularly turn over leadership turns the state into a long way the most powerful defense against disruption is organizations tearing up the parts of the state most easily is replacing them with clear politics and democratic practice and mutual aid is a demobilizing tactic that relies on a heuristic of scarcity circulating ever dwindling resources within already precarious communities which undermines and co-opts the scope, scale, and orientation of revolutionary organizing. Only confrontational mass struggle can fight and win a world where survival isn't questioned in the first place. Now is a critical moment to intensify revolution struggle as capitalist critics extract more and more resources from communities. The one you see co-designs the survival, which means you should heighten the stakes of tactical divergences. That's Jit Propacon 23. Contemporary mutual aid is at least even organized efforts to consider mutual aid. The Minneapolis team to strike block the city to a halt tradition of social organizing solidarity table forces conduct agile laser focus strike solidarity organizing is implemented on temporary basis. Anything more would be unsustainable. Communities making sacrifices, but it was through the strike actions themselves, not the programs that workers demonstrated power. Amazon Labor Union distributed free food, created opportunities together, and joint large. The feeling of a need was not in and of itself large scale class struggle that directly confronts capitalists. Necessary components of mutual aid maintain they can do both, and practice these actions often incompletely sincere to mutual aid work. This stems from a broad assessment that mutual aid and confrontational struggle are just two different but comparable tactics. The biggest dangers of mutual aid as a political practice is the ease with which it can be co-opted. This is on full display during the struggle to defend abortion. Funding should have been bringing the entire periphery to the streets. Instead, they hid behind calls for mutual aid, demobilizing the movement. What the situation required was organizing a mass movement. Progressive politicians played mutual aid, continuing hesitancy to confront a ruling class of the decay of capitalism makes ways as it has in the last few years. The ruling class is becoming increasingly desperate. Movements that will have to be brought up, more organizing and more combative than ever to be can take care of us and point people in the wrong direction. The skyrocketing class of living working people have less and less when the 12% of medical governments are successful. Capitalism has impoverishing people too quickly to make up the difference for each other. Mutual aid can impact a limited number of mass movement can develop to fight which concurs demands. The exposed to capitalism is being capable of granting them the work for Marxist politically strengthen the movements by combating class disunity. We need system change, not survival. Power capitalism seems overwhelming in this attempt to put our hands on effects in survival, but the abolition of capitalism will not be built by planting gardens, fixing break lights, or real building how socialists prepare for inevitable revolutionary convulsions that will take place in the coming months. And the app puts the cart before the horse, retheorizing love ignores the roots of love and maintaining private property. Also, the prior question to any non-capitalist catharsis that's Carter is 16 love and new moral or ethical goods of love not themselves bring about new social forms, new forms of love, and make possible material developments, changes in social relations, production, new social relations, production only brought by revolution to break from private property forms of love. In other words, necessitate the abolition of private property. The relations of production is cost contradictions. Capitalism have intensified to more family members and pulled to the workforce. Capital also especially nuclear family form and new flexible post-nuclear post-human, but not post-class love is emerging in the root of ideological purging of all work codes once used to the ruling class and bring about new moral codes of sexuality useful for adjusting workers. The intensification of class contradictions in capitalism. Now I'm going to mark the Carter class contradictions now. And the athletes co-opted it's neoliberal multiculturalism. That's Snelling 22. Spencer will send this, and it's like a recipe exchange in neoliberal multiculturalism by Islamic caricatures of culturally specific distance as far as elitism as an ideological structure of privileges individuals' freedom to act and market by commodifying and erasing ethnic cuisines due to authenticity, flattening the cultural nuance. It's aspirational cosmopolitanism with the appeal to develop a worldly palette involved in incorporating ethnic cuisines in a way that objectifies culture. The very practice involved in the recipe exchange generated community engagement, enabled commodification. Real liberal multiculturalism colonialism entered into the realm of everyday life, allowed people to understand international by taking inaccurate or simplified versus cultural engagement, recipe exchange, and did foster ideological structures by constricting a sense of good taste from erasing and commodifying differences rather than developing awareness to respect multiculturalism reflects trade. Understanding of ethnic and racial difference allows you to narrate the value of ethnic cuisines and exchange recipes at enormous scale at home. And racial capitalism is hurtling towards extinction over interrelation of value mediates racial and gender subjection to proliferate and abstract rapidly intensifying capital society into black captivity and colonial eradication. Only a communist transition can decompose the anti-black ontology of value to generate a post-capitalist materiality, but the 20 theory of social cause the shot and the locus of dispossession which undermines its revolution potential. That's 23 according to self-Marxist desperation from capitalist accumulation rather than injecting gender racialized violence and some theory of value is really how the movement capital mediates racialized violence and how the racial mediation by capital is the mechanism of continuity. Capital becomes the social substance of education that create the possibility for value to emerge as motives of society, plantation, reduction of presence, slave labor, colonies, territories with the conditions that made possible the emergence of value, structural eradication of self-determination through separation. The same things entailed by the liberal idea of freedom, capital process, and property, value creation, determination. It's a simple point out a categorical distinction rendering the extinction oriented world that capital creates. And when the cutting that capital creates go into the alternative to embody the historic party. That's the alternative. It can be hard to measure out of my small classes could ever create limiting momentum, fragmenting it, Jews spontaneous separating uprisings into liberal forms, or Rosling's the activist left adjust. The Marxists tried to focus entirely on building before a party examples of revolution which put off the development reign. Few and far between the socialist and expensive organization capable of uniting struggles defending against state repression. We cannot bypass this bisexual organizing without organizing our own scattered forces. Doing unity information studies, seeing the feelings of the left as the church barriers. We reframe them as solvable problems and list many comments to work through them. Not only can we succeed, but we develop the skills we need to construct a conscious communist party. A party doesn't mean a replica of the Lenin's cadre to agency to shape the parties in the hands of living communists as form belonging only to us, the historic party. Keep the classical life between moments about people and transmit theory formal parties may come and go, with the historic party always remains experimenting with methods at the core of the historic party of the communist militants who intervene, mobilizing, study, building a party is a constant process of expensive political conversations, questions, or answering through organizational discipline, holding members accountable in the absence of former party communists, hold each other accountable. We owe fidelity to the historic party and transformation that women atomize mass into a self-aware block through culture intervention directly addressing social problems within the left. We can till more fertile soil. My intention is developing ethical responsibility to communists, rising the communists with whom we walk towards the communists and draw from past incarcerations to the movement and tie together the formal party. Go to case one is parameters. The absolute having method of explanation of what the method is and a clear metric for evaluating which is better. They have no metric by which to assess often the gain through endorsing recipes that allows the after show the explanation once the after one sees, especially when crosses concedes the debate is about quote sharing ideas. Don't allow them to blow it up. Don't allow them to blow it up. No clear delineation. Meet the judge has to fill in with their own biases and distinctions about whose performance resistance was better. Second is that empire is constituted through the contractual arrangement of the OQ as the household is not merely a social form but instead operates as a central mode of evaluation for possessive logic, racial capitalism that manifests racialized and colonial violence. When it sees demand for resilience and future social reproduction, valorizes hermeneutics of the household that make women hear their calls for kinship, community, and care. That's Cooper in Metropolis 09. The household determined the wasteland to which property, contract, and credit were recognized as conjecture, articulate empires, horizons, or orderly maximum, moment of ontology, uncertainty, ontological uncertainty, and contrast to possessive logic of land frontier, the intensive expansion of financial frontier turns laborers and investments of the self is no longer liberals in the term of the architecture of a house. While relations were rather the imperative to appreciate the value of oneself in the home psychology, resilience predominated over that self as a possession, resource, attraction is intimately tied to the expansion of the household, carving up new and re-script spaces. Terra, buildings continually being declared the mining boom is the land grab the northern territory advertises itself as a campaign to foster proper household management amongst indigenous people to reconstruct the frontiers performed through the imposition of the household relations, self-determination returns to the neoliberal imperative of self-management, the hermeneutics of the household could be understood in general sense that the frontiers based on which the value form of reproduce the part of articulation, uniting geological transmission, which lead reproduction of labor, the intimate sexual economy, and in life is also the place in which the value form can be undone, the failure to reproduce or produce, otherwise can be liquefied by failure to fulfill obligations, and their demand to think it's the rights from the particularly of where we are now, debate lived experience survival, delimits the scope of our possibility and denies the possibilities of life that are lived in excess of our lived experiences. That's May 19 deployment living experience collapse analysis having something that to you does not necessitate that you know what, why, how, or how we might live and make it never happen again. Lived experience this allow coalitional thinking, disallow struggling with and among others. One's own lived experience cannot be the reach of one's politicality. The lived experience might not allow for lords kinship across difference or way to be coalitional solidarity without having the same experience. We do not become experts on totality of oppressive systems if we have to be effective. There are much more loving critiques of lived experience seems to be the norm in communities reactive and unhelpful. Why do we think about ideas if they have no relation to life? Why think about other forms of life that make it possible to lived experiences predicated on what exists? So my existence and access to that, I want the possibility of living in access. I yearn and thinking of access to lived experience because I am committed to skewed. Life choices not being the only experience to which we may lay valid claims.
That was the Bay evidence.
Yeah.
Did you send out the neolib co-option for that? Multiculturalism?
I sent it. Yeah, I sent it.
Yeah.
Let me just download it.
I'm good when you are.
Okay, so historic party, what is it?
Yeah, the historic party draws. The historic party A begins with commitment to the communist horizon. by drawing together the party formed and past incarcerations of the party formed into a commitment to that mass organizing.
So anyone can commit to mass organizing.
Well, Mial evidence makes a specific argument about how it's not just an endorsement of any specific party, but rather a fidelity to the party form in and of itself that's necessary to move towards collective action.
Like, what does that look like? What do you
Yeah,
have to
so
do?
one of the examples the Mial evidence gives is the Marxist Center, which collapsed because of internal organizational disagreements. But the reason it collapsed was because it was not connected to not connected
Is
to
there
the
any
broader
accountability mechanism in the
form
party?
that's necessary. What do you mean by
Do
accountability?
you like vet people who join, or does anyone join?
Yeah, so the party engages in democratic centralized decision making
Okay,
and
so
in order to make
How does that
decisions
happen?
about what, so democratic centralist decision making involves not a one-to-one vote of like this is the thing that the party should do, but rather
really,
involves a set of,
Yes.
what happens if people vote like
So-
right,
racists are
it
allowed
involves
in?
a set of caucuses within the party
Would
that
racists
best
be allowed in?
determine what actions the party should take for its most
Pedophiles
marginalized
be allowed
members.
in?
Are you gonna let me finish the question?
This is like way pretty
Are you
simple.
going to
Are
let
they
me
allowed
finish
in?
the answer this time?
Are they allowed in the party?
Okay, the party makes decisions via democratic centralist decision making that is through
To be
caucus,
honest, I don't really
through caucus
trust
structures that are
decision-making at all.
necessary for its most marginalized members to enact. Meaning, yes, they vote to kick racist members out of the party because
Okay,
that
thank
would be
you.
best
Is that really that worth
So
saying?
you're-
for marginalized people in the party.
You're right. Trust is not built based on individual
All right, and
performances.
correct.
Trust is built based on things like
Which is-
political education and movement building, which we
Which
can
is
engage in.
why
and
the party form is necessary to
Yeah.
solve.
Can I ask
Because
the
the
next
act
question?
relies on ad hoc structures
Can I
that
ask-
cannot engage in those accountability
Can I
mechanisms.
ask the next question, please?
Yes.
Can the alt ever result in the affirmative?
I don't know.
No, we reject the affirmative organizing political tactic. It's one that is not organized around the form of the party.
Sure. Let's talk about this mutual aid link. Your card talks a lot about sort of like organizations, like local scale. Does the alt explicitly reject all of those examples?
What was the first part of the question? So,
So your card talks a lot about like unions in modern day. There's sort of like mutual aid organizing. Does the alt reject all of those examples?
I'm confused as the connection you're drawing between unions and mutual aid organizing. Those are most certainly not the same thing. The
So
card is very explicit about saying why mutual aid is a bad tactic, because it merely relies on the circulation of scarce resources between people who don't have anything to give in the first place. It says that only organizational form can engage in resource distribution on a scale at which it ensures every party member has access to those resources.
Right. So does the alternative require sort of like large scale or like is
That is the point of yes.
Yes,
that-
it engages in fidelity to the party form. It says the party form is necessary to
Okay, how do you
solve
find
any of
it?
those.
Can I just like get an example of what that looks like in the real world?
What do you mean in the real world?
Like just like what's an example of that? The alternative, like what is
Well,
the
okay, so a couple examples. So we'll defend three pieces of the party. Democratic centralism, political education programs, serve the people programs. Democratic centralism is
What is
just
serving?
really
Hold on.
the
What does serving the people look like? If they're
Serve
hungry, do you
the-
feed
serve
them?
the people programs are distinct from things like mutual
If
aid.
they're hungry, do you?
Because-
If they're hungry, do you feed them? Is that serving the people?
So, not in a vacuum.
Okay,
no.
so they all
Like,
starve in the party. Like as long as we
They
are
starve in the world of the app. There's
Yeah.
no
No, they don't.
organizational form
What?
to give
Feed
people
them in the
food.
world of the
Question
app.
mark.
Okay, I'm sending the pics. Okay, sent. Case cap. Alright, y'all ready?
You say case cap.
Case cap, yeah.
Okay, I'm good.
Jefferson? Okay. It's bigger. I'm gonna add this as well.
For after endorsing about metaphors of nuclear policy, we think about cooking food and about are good ways to understand debate and nuclear policy. There are two impacts. One, communal morph metaphors deconstruct taboo subjects and introduce new spaces of life and spaces of death. This can provide healing in the face of suffering and spaces that can be found, which applies to debate. They have not answered metaphor as an understanding of weighing the world, which means that we are the one who controls how epistemology filters the debate, which will matter for what this debate can do and what the space can do. It also matters for the real world. Buddhist understandings of suffering arise from individuals and communities key to solve it. No Buddhism wrong card in the 1MC. Do not allow it in the block. It'll skew. Novel version strategy totally dropped our theorization of suffering that this our second benefit of Buddhist dukkha, no card, speaks to how suffering is caused. Our evidence says that it's caused by attachment in individuals of only relationality can solve, which is the most proximate root cause of suffering. Buddhism is true and trapping of the world. The Buddha evidence says that there's interconnectedness as described by quantum physics, etc., which means that we are the team controls the structures for the world. And racial capitalism is a result of exploitation. Exploitation can only occur as a result of seeing the other, which means you must filter through our Buddhist analogies, parameters. We are practice parameter for this argument. It could be negotiating, negating our practice. Cooking as practice is good, created, and then valuable for society and kinship. The transformation, subjectivity, the affective significance of cooking enables resistance. We have a clear definition of how this debate the evaluating. You shall align yourself with the best epistemology, which should be the role of the judge. I explain this in cross-examination. We have said that the way the debate should go down is to share ideas. We've rejected the capitalists on their communist ways of understanding. If it is just rejecting all culturalism, that is a fucked up epistemology, which will explain the critique, which is a form of contestation, which means that all of their education is bad, which is an impact turn to any of their standards. They have nothing else. And aside from this, in all of our multiculturalism impact turns on the other page, as well as our Buddhist understandings as being good, our impact turns to the terminal impact of this argument. The next argument is this Cooper evidence empire is not contracted through individual, community, and care. Our argument is that calls for community and kinship do not value things within the household. If it's a question of domesticity, this will be impact turns on the critique. And this evidence just says the psychology of resilience dominates over self-imposition, but that doesn't make sense because Buddhism says that there is no self. And our argument said not that you are resilient for your own self and you're individually resilient, but everyone should care for one another. And if anything, the idea of individual resilience is a formation and tactic of capitalism. Think of austerity politics where people cut things like welfare. That is an example of how burden is placed on the individual to care for themselves instead of on the community to care for one another, which is an example for why we are in line with the alternative. The Bay evidence, it makes no sense. It just says that no identity politics ever. That's fucking racist and having something to necessitate for you and think about from your individual subjectivity is important. And this does not describe individual arguments in debate because in debate we have already both made arguments about our individual relationship to things, and it's obviously fundamentally inevitable. The academy sees all things inevitably. So it's the question of that, and then obviously Clarkson's inevitable, and they are asking you to affirm their scholarship, which means there's no external impact to this that you can externalize, which is not symmetric to both sides. Okay. Permutation do both. Food is key to energy. How do you get to the movement? You must feed yourself in order to get there. Communism requires some amount of organizing. It needs to happen in sites and places. Where do the communist organizing happen? It happens in tables. It happens in the cafes. It happens in underground spaces when people are sharing food. Those sites of playing are essential to get communist organizing off the ground, which means that we're the ones who create energy to catalyze all of those movements. Permutation, our England evidence is fantastic, and I know that Twinsie is going to try and pre-quote this evidence, so I'm going to preempt all these things in advance for why there is no trade-off argument. Our England evidence says, quote, we must interpret the world to change it in a transformation of subjectivity through practice and language is pivotal to such a process, which means in debate our arguments work, but also in practice, and cooking is good. It says that, quote, sharing a meal is an everyday experience of togetherness, i.e. communality, and also says food acts as a creative force to produce new emotional ties centered to being together, i.e. building a party together will be communal in nature. It also says, quote, outside of Western food models, where food is a wider total society, meaning that food can build a family and kid are often chosen in career communities and come to see a larger rejection of kinship in the nuclear family. This evidence is directly against any contextualization that they will do because chosen families are ones that are healthy in nature. Remember the 1AC cross experiment where they said that you can allow anyone in, or are you going to be more suspect of vetting procedures, which they are very, very reluctant to tell us about, or are you going to choose on your own? Our argument is that choosing who enters the party on your own is a much healthier way of doing so. Which is what the permutation will look like. Now, permutation do each internal transformation like the class struggles rooted in a dynamic of difference. Only a Buddhist philosophy can interrupt this at an individual level, external to debate. You can do the alternative in debate. We can do the voice level 14. Marxist articulation cannot apply to Dharma, which have been analysis for reality. In case Buddhism highlighted defense social transformation, both philosophers and their basic human suffering for liberation from possessions. There's no independent self. Buddhism suffering results from constructing the self that is independent from objects, resulting in alienation. This dualism reverse by not clinging to things outside the self and radiation. Buddhism opposes capitalist accumulation. Interbeing, greed occurs because people have no insight on non-duality. Constructed artificial separate self builds from this ignorance and developing hatred and disarc, giving recent class struggle, non-discrimination between self and other relates to understanding compassion and Buddhist communist synthesis. Some aspects of life with still cause suffering. Marxism reaches its limit. Marxism emphasis on class struggle, encouraging hatred, neglecting compassion, energy, selected and destructive activities. We emphasize political action, which privileges the external. Buddhism this emphasis with the internal, and Marxism with the external. They're mutually complementary. Marxism and Buddhism are doing the same thing, but at different levels of liberation. Is both psychological and economic, inner and outer meditation and building. The party should be practiced simultaneously. There's no contradiction between meditation and political activity. It's imperative to recognize the individual transformations and prerequisites of social transformation. Battlegrounds linked to challenge anti-capitalism requires praxis. This is a starting point argument about why we should challenge challenge industrialized food, balance in 18, critique of the world food system, advanced critique of inequity evaluation of treating food in global north and comparing of the global south, compounding profit out of the food industry suffer to move beyond their contact towards processed food solutions to shop the periphery of the grocery store, judgmental people who struggle with financial leverages already. They come out of the lack of power to poor people who make us work allegations to what its alternative in-house and socialism requires practice and engaging the only contestation of battlegrounds. Capitalism takes industrialized food can change the way it constructs our environment and hurts us as consumers. What does it really mean to defend food? Capitalism is a system of economics that works towards efficiency, processed food, profit. We eat made more than we use to produce nutrition, which inevitably leads to bad effects on the environment and consumers' overconsumption and cancer. The mutual aid argument is obviously bad. If we can ever help one another, it links to all of the austerity arguments that it did on the case. But their own card flows app. It says, quote, cook unions train volunteers to serve thousands of workers daily. It also says food donated by sympathetic negotiators and farmers. All things that are good. It says, quote, Amazon labor union distributed few fruit, creating opportunities to gather and enjoy. But even if they somehow say that their card does not defend those things external, there are many examples of why donating food can be good. Black Panther Free Breakfast Program. Think about farmer strikes and how that can mobilize political protests. The Dutch farmers threw shit on the political building and then made people pass particular laws, which demonstrates if there is some level of standing change, it needs to happen first. But and again, it's also just important for survival, which is why the Black Panther Party is important. Donating in Gaza and then giving them food is important to survive moments of colonial violence. We provide survival mechanisms. The alternative does not. Counter evidence. It's racist. There's a pathology. Just as it's an Orientalist trope, you can see hibachi to deconstruct the nuclear family in terms of kinship. You don't tie that because it's chosen family. Think about how in the nation communities, everyone is your auntie and your uncle because that's a generative form of engagement. To deny that, to script the app, not because it's small rhetoric or emissions, demonstrates that they hold Asian people and Asian community practices and the Asian community communication practices as overtly suspect and then is violent form of racial pathology. The next, if they come to domesticity link, they cannot get it both ways because our argument is distinct to this. Our evidence also says that although cooking food is about labor to reduce this, it's just a disservice, which means that the home argument makes no sense. And it cites feminist scholars that says, quote, cooking held significant something more enduring than its definitions in the form of reproductive labor, and also which is our inland evidence. The multiculturalism link. It's racist to talk about multiculturalism as bad. Cosmopolitan understanding of the world is good. Hibachi agrees, socialize. How we understand it family, and it's not individuated but communal. Think about about the chosen family analysis I just did. It's essential to day-to-day survival. Any link that leads you to rejecting the app will reject all these communal practices, which means in the all to condemn people to food insecurity. You can never eat the food you love. Again, hot pot and hibachi are moments of communal understandings where we can organize together, create enclaves for people to survive. Think about how in Tokyo town, Chinatowns, etc. are economic drivers for livingness. If they say that that's bad, then that means we need moments of economic resistance in the face of all this capital violence, which is bad. Anything else results in gentrification. Think about how COVID gives us uniqueness for this. It demonstrates how people do not want to go there because of fear of COVID and a yellow peril. This is the ones not seen as care, which means that this is a net benefit to the app. Do not evaluate the link based on incommissions, which means that we do not have to describe anything. Anything else would be the question of model minority, which we can analyze more in the 2NR. The alternative cannot be trusted. The Vanguard Party was racist in the past. Their communist organism requires incorporation through elimination, which Mount Volker engulfed into their party. Think of how Mao Zedong burned down to Buddhist temples, as well as in Cambodia when Pol Pot or whoever was the person would try to break all people and engage in cultural genocide on Buddhists. This demonstrates that the Vanguard Party in elimination of culture always happens through a racist lens. Now back to their Snelling evidence. The Snelling evidence, cooking and food can serve as an entity with healing. The Snelling and 23 identifications always about moments of conversion that identity that can be non-adultly and true never for alienation. How society practices in Western foods over others made a pathway to contest alienation by cooking up, healing practices the donation into for Phillips and the company's alienation. We must balance together everyday chart to creating wellness food, providing valuable conceptual to the kid about thinking about health. Keep for scholars using these skills get the closely guarded to them alongside charges that contested. Snelling, okay.
Alright. Are you good for crossing?
Yes.
Okay. What is the mechanism that the app endorses for getting people food?
We endorse a variety of mechanisms for getting people food, but we think that a praxis which acknowledges that it's important to feed people will get them the food
So the
however
app
they
is now.
necessary.
Oh yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Why is that unique beyond just food is good?
Why is it unique? Because you all said people starve in your party. No takebacks, that was
First of all,
process.
that's ridiculous.
No
Second
takebacks,
of
that
all,
was process.
I just
You
asked
said-
you about
you said-
basic app inherency.
Your partner-
People cook in the status
Hold on.
quo, and yet people are also
Yes,
starving.
people cook in
What
the
does
status
app
quo.
do to get
People
people
cook
to
in the
eat
status
food?
quo, and they have to buy stuff from the grocery store, etc.
They
Which is
do.
an
How does
example
the
of
app
why
solve
we need
that?
to challenge industrialized food. It's
Okay,
an example
okay,
of what the
that's good.
permutation would do. Your
How
partner,
does
by
the
the way,
app
your partner, by the way,
challenge
said
industrialized
serving
food?
people. Hold on. I need to
How does the
clarify
app
this.
challenge
Your partner said
industrialized food?
serving people does not include feeding people.
Rishi,
That is going to be
hey,
comprehensive.
Rishi, you're talking over Ryan. Stop. Thank
How
you.
does the app get people industrial? How does the app solve your argument about industrialized food?
We think the permutation would solve that. And
How
we
does
think
the
it's a
app solve
starting point of what we can do and challenge and how we can
Okay,
avoid
so how does the app solve it? What does the app do?
solve it? We think that the ask practice is something that can be exportable and would solve.
Okay, what is the exportable tactic that you're endorsing beyond cooking?
Cooking is an exportable practice. Our whole point
People
is that
are
we
already
have to
cooking
keep
this stuff
zero. Okay, but our whole point is that the way we think about cooking now does not encompass the communal aspects that we can use to challenge and resist things.
Who is we?
Our point-
Like, so people
we as,
obviously
we
cook
as
in communal
us,
settings.
debaters, like,
People obviously cook in communal settings. What does the app do that departs from that?
okay, so the app, okay, so you're not gonna go for like people cook now, that means the app is bad. The fact people cook now is a reason the app's method is good, obviously.
So people cook, so we should win. That is your argument?
No, this is like reductive of our argument. But
That's what you just said.
I kind of just explained it already, like I can do it
Sure.
again.
I really think you did. But I actually have a follow-up question that will clarify maybe. On the mutual aid link, you made an argument, you pulled a line from our card that said communist parties have trained workers to distribute food. How did the app train workers to distribute food on a mass scale?
Okay, I don't think the training is like a huge internal link to
No,
this.
that was the line you pulled out.
Okay, but our evidence says that there's a cookers union and there were volunteers who serve people. It says that food was donated with sympathetic groceries and farmers.
Okay,
It
can
also
you tell me
says
where the
labor
1AC endorsed
distributed
unions?
free food.
Can you
We
tell me
think the
where 1AC
permutation endorses that. We think the permutation endorses that.
Can you tell me where the 1AC endorsed a practice that was compatible with that? Like, I
Okay.
need one line that tells me what the
What do you
practice
mean?
the
Our
app
whole
endorsed.
praxis was that food should be communal in nature. We should share food. Our England evidence gives the example of in the Ivory Coast, people like a whole village would raise a child basically.
Okay,
And the whole point is that even if it's not your own food, you
Yeah,
give
so
away
that
your food
already
to someone
happened.
else.
that already happened. What does the app do?
Okay, dude, like
Don't call her dude.
I
Don't fucking
apologize.
call
One
her
last
dude.
question, I have 10 seconds left. Top of the 1AC, you said that metaphors create spaces of life. What is a space of life?
space of life is something where we can have healing and energy and it gives us vitality.
Okay. Are we taking that?
I'll take her.
10 minutes. Starting now.
Sorry for saying dude, by the way.
It's okay.
Okay, stop prep 230 used. I see Jefferson in the hallway.
Shit, I'm nowhere near ready. Did you send a dog?
No.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
Okay, you good?
No.
No, sorry. Take your time.
Start like lower. Yeah, I'm good.
Jefferson?
It's easy to sustain yourself within this world, but it's hard to build the infrastructure to abolish the conditions to make that necessary. Revolution is that difficult work which we have a matter of years to accomplish. Is accelerating imperialism, fascism, incarceration, pandemics, and ecological destruction. Push the planet and us beyond the capacity to recover. This debate is a question of competing praxis. The system only responds to material disruptions, the circulation of surplus value, but it thrives off of schemes that allow us to resist within it, like the affirmative, which you think you should negate any strategy that fails to consolidate effective material resistance. Prefer exportability. The only way that they can engage with the app is through literature that presumes some level of exportability beyond the space of debate. That means that you should weigh the affirmative as a methodology tied to the lines in the 1AC and vote negative on presumption. If by the 2 hour the app is only good for people inside this room, inside debate, or if it's a non-unique tactic that affirms the status quo. The solvency threshold is not just imagination, nor is it surviving within this world, because people will always find interim modes of survivability, ways of distributing resources or feeding themselves in fucked up worlds or places like debate, but it takes intention and care to produce worlds where that survival is not questioned or necessary in the first place. Conceited authorization of racial capitalism. 1MC Bestcard says that racial capitalism produces the violences that produces the violences of this world that lead to things like factory farming, etc. Since capitalist logics evaluation are constantly engaged in turning us and materials into labor for dispossession, categorical distinctions make labor possible in particular by tying black flesh to economies of financialization, which structurally incarnates anti-blackness through mechanisms of capital, from slavery to sharecropping, the prison industrial complex, which all demonstrates that when they say that Buddhism can resolve these things, they are wrong, because you cannot think yourself out of a prison, nor can you organize with food inside of it. Those structures condition us to tie blackness to value form criminality and produce socially ingrained anti-black violence, which is an impact that only we can solve. It also proves that the persistence of racial capitalism overcomes absolvency, conceited austerity framing. It controls the direction of every link turned in this debate, because capitalist austerity crises can crush every space of community building, particular ones that are based on limited resources. That's why small businesses go out of business. Food Not Bombs runs out of money all the time. Debates dying every space of community that we rely on. It's shit kicked by capitalism, because we rely on ever dwindling pools of resources as capitalism extracts more and more value from us. You should vote negative on presumption, because capitalism crushes their resistance and they need us to solve, which demonstrates that we solve, but they can't. Proves the extent of our impact framing, because cap controls the viability of their project in the first place. They've made a bunch of arguments about why food is key to energy, but we are winning that takes all of those arguments out, because you might need to feed yourself, but they produce a sort of victim blaming where they say that if we just think differently about the world, which is all of their Buddhism framing, then people will when I see card that's like, what is even hunger? No, hunger is something material that is controlled by material access to means of production and to the means of production, which demonstrates that we are key to solve their impact. It straight turns their arguments about energy. They cross-express them on the app is not unique, which takes out the next few arguments. People are cooking now. They can't articulate how they add to that, nor can they tie it to any lines in the one you see about why they are necessary, but instead they've conceded that the lines they pull say things like unions are good at organizing food distribution, which is the reason why unions solve food distribution, not why thinking about communing around tables is good. That demonstrates that language is not key, because I've done the work on materiality above. It says they try to use some link terms of the nuclear family. That will be the one in our own case. They say choosing who enters the party on your own is what the permutation looks like. No, that's wrong and bad. We're impact turning it. I'm going to do the localism link here. Food is a bad way to cohere organizing. It's unsustainability creates fractured organizing. Seeds the material, the tools, material struggle to capitalism, and it replicates violence in the process, which turns energy and burnout. Cross proves the link, but they can see that they cohere into multiple smaller tables, which is the quote-unquote accountability mechanism of the app. It justifies negative presumption because that is non-unique. One insignificance that the left thrives off of proliferation of multiple non-connected tactics, which proves they see the tools of capitalism. Conceded this also produces violent organizing. External impact demonstrates that it is bad to see the material ground upon which violent interpersonal and social constructions are built, because horizontal structures rely on things like affect, love, found families. That leads burnout, because they create a self-policing wherein people always ask themselves, are my actions here worthy of love, instead of being comfortable critiquing one another through things like line struggle in the party, which is a better way to organize. That is also supercharged, because food is not a universal good, nor is it universally accessible. It is often weaponized by empire, which makes it a bad word of solidarity when we could come together around a table. That space is always already a failed point of organization that is also not accessible. Think about those who don't have access to organizing around food like prisoners, people with eating disorders, flower massacres through aid drops in Palestine straight turns all of their arguments because it proves that food is not inherently a space of love, but when we try to organize around things like love and the nuclear family, it empirically becomes a site of violence because it is taken up by the tools of capitalism they have seeded to become a weapon of imperialism that hijacks community. People gathered for food and were fucking killed. And the fact that it's literally Ramadan, Buddhism is absolutely not a universal political line, that they can't make space for others, and for others in i.e. their relationship to food, writes out comrades' relationship to community, and victim blames them for not being able to access that in the first place because they didn't think themselves out of hunger hard enough. They read a Bellis 18 card about how industrialized food is how CAP inserts itself. No, this is the internal link to victim blaming because this line contains cards like food is capitalism because, quote, we eat way more than we used to, which leads to bad effects on the environment and consumers, i.e. they blame people who do not have access to things like good quality food in the first place and say that the onus is on them instead of being on the party to enable them to solve. I answer the link turns above because those are all about unions and they were not able to pull a line across it that proves that they solved the Cotter card. I don't understand I don't understand this argument. I don't think that they understand the link. That was the localism link I did above it. Impactrons using love as a space to organize and participate that they are more violent. We did not read any links about, quote, multiculturalism because our argument is not people cannot choose to be Buddhist in the party or whatever. It's that using that as a site and a tool for organization is unaccessible and a bad starting point, which turns it back on them. Academic resistance key? No, we're not model minority links. What the fuck? Affective community link. I'm extending the selling evidence here, organizing around togetherness and community through recipes is weaponized to enable us to survive exploitation, which sustains this world instead of ending it. That is why Google puts out for their employees and every company on the planet does parties with private chefs because exploitation feels better for a family who eats together. Recipe as a metaphor is bad. This card could not be more fucking specific to their advocacy statement. Tyler says recipes get uptaken through market commodification and objectify cuisines that are understood as ethnic, which enables white elites to extract wealth and cultural capital from the community building. Then when I see link turns Buddhism because the culturally and spiritually specific relationship that people might have to food is uptaken by TikTok influencers and celebrity chefs to extract social capital and feed community capitalism. It crushes the potential of affordability for their practice, and the impact is commodity fetishism that straight turns to energy arguments because we have a grant that says it alienates black and brown people from community spaces and allows white people to kick them out, i.e. I get to decide who I want in my party because their foods are perverted by capitalism and fed back to them under discourses of authenticity. Commodification is an independent impact. It turns the work. Now, Buddhism, it's not a way to achieve a party. If it was, it would have already, but it's also not a universal good, which means the also not a universal bad, proven by literal Buddhist genocides in Myanmar. If people who happen to be Buddhist also think that we should exploit people, then those people are bad regardless of if they are Buddhist or not. Permutation, they don't get one. Which proves that the crosses proves they have no offense on the permutation. They've also conceded the warrants one and seen yell about how the left is fragmentary and privileged positions without coherence or coordination, which I did at the top. It demonstrates that there are multiple tables that they create failed. Finally, there's a burnout to set organizers have limited time and energy to devote to revolution. They concede that the permutation is a logic of addition that cements those cycles of burnout and demobilize movements rather than energizing them. So the alternative is a prerequisite. Finally, no permanent method debating is better for debatability, revolutionary, or education. Go to the alternative here. The alternative is to endorse Communist Party organizing as a historic necessity, which is how our time revolutionary spaces should be oriented. 3 tactics explained across this. 1 is democratic centralism. The party form must work to a global scope and scale, solve their impacts because capitalism is necessarily global. Things like factory farming prove only scale democratic centralized organizing can resolve them. 2 is political education programs. They give people the skills they need to develop liberatory party lines, organize serve the people programs, navigate crackdown infiltration, and do the kind of distribution that unions can do, which is key to field about people program with Oakland's political education membership bureau is a great example because it proves that only that can weed out white supremacist assumptions. Finally, to serve the people programs, those expand the movements of for survivability and are distinct from things like mutual aid because they do not work to distribute resources for everyone in pool, but instead they align themselves with orgs like International Workers of the World to develop self-sustaining programs for food that organize people as it gives them those things, which means that resource distribution also gives people the political tools to not have to rely on these structures anymore, / to organize themselves, which is better than I can't, or you get kicked out or whatever because I felt like it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Ready to talk?
Mm-hmm.
So, when you were explaining, you were saying that people can choose to be Buddhist in the party. What does that look like?
Lots of people choose lots of things, but the party is literally the 3 things that I described.
But what does it look like to choose to be Buddhist in the party?
Probably just like what it looks like to choose to be Buddhist elsewhere.
Okay. Anything else?
like, the party does not, like, restrict people's choices in that way. The thing that it does is orients our telos towards the communist horizon.
Okay, orients our telos to communism, and you were talking about exportability. What does these debates do towards helping that telos, helping us get there?
Well, we think that the way that the judge should evaluate if the app is good or not is by imagining it on a global scale, the alternative as well. What do these debates do to get us there? The
So
meal
we
piece of
fiat
evidence,
it, or what?
The meal piece. Well, so like, I guess I'm confused as to what you mean by fiat.
Well, you said imagine it on a global scale. So like, this
Well,
makes me think of like
wait.
Kant, where we universalize an idea and see if it's good. Is it like that, or is it like
I really don't
fiat?
think we've gone for categorical imperative.
Well, you said we should imagine things on a global scale, right? And I'm sort of trying to figure out what's the way we get there.
Well,
Do
like,
we debate about that.
when we decide what politics are best, we should decide what politics would be best when they would be implemented on a global scale.
So
right?
what does the AF do that trades off with these things in
Proliferates
debate?
multiple
No,
small
not outside of debate.
tables.
In debate. What does it do in debate that stops us from getting to that telos, communism?
That's not what this. Oh, okay, you have affirmed creating multiple small parties. What the app does in debate that's bad is going to be a bunch of.
Well,
the
we
one
don't think
on.
that the multiple small. We can talk about that in the 1 hour.
Okay, but that was like what the permutation was, though. Like that's how you said you solve our impacts, and we said that was bad. So I don't
Okay,
understand how you
so-
think you can be combined with us, though.
Okay, cool. My next question regards all these examples you're giving about food unions, giving out food, etc.
Mhm.
All of these seem, honestly, I do not understand why these are not firm examples of why when we challenge things using unions or
No.
challenge things that these are
One-
what a
One,
communist telos would be good and why
Okay,
it's not
let me
justification
answer.
for the perm.
you gave an example like the BPP. You are not the BPP. They cohered food praxis around a party, like around a party form. You cohere food praxis around a social and theological axis, which is an
Okay,
axis
I
of
totally
community building,
disagree.
not
The Black
comradeship.
Panther Party
Second-
worked in small communal areas as well, in particular areas. Our whole point is
Well,
that
hang
these
on,
things are
but-
good. You said yourself
but-
that unions are something that are good.
Mhm.
Aid,
But, like,
food
I
aid
guess
is
my-
good. Isn't this just
Where did
agreeing
the-
with our permutation?
Where did the 1AC say that unions were good?
Yeah,
you
and
said that the
also,
perm.
like,
We
and
said that
also
that's
the
what the
Black Panther
permutation
Party
looked
breakfast
like.
programs ended eventually because they were raided, because they were not coherent around a
No,
larger
okay,
organizational.
so
yeah.
why does that
Actually
rating not
proves
apply
the link
equally to the alternative? Like,
Huh?
alright, well, we'll talk about
It's just case and something. Okay.
There's that.
Yeah, I think it's already. Is everyone good again?
Yeah, it's just case, right?
Yeah, just case.
I'm good.
Okay. Marble for you again?
I have the document, just pull it up next to my floor. Yeah, I'm good.
Perfect. Extending parameters first is an independent reason to vote negative because the app is not negatable and kills revolutionary planning. Ask yourself, what exactly is the app's method? How do we disprove the desirability of cooking food or communal food? And what does it mean to participate in, affirm, or enact cooking food? The method is fucking inevitable because people literally cook food all of the time. This is both terminal presumption because you should not endorse an app that is the status quo, and also often because it's obviously impossible to prove that any alternative strategy or idea would be mutually exclusive with people literally eating food or cooking because people are always already doing that on an everyday basis, even if they win the performance of the 1 2 we see are good examples of their method or that it's good for debate, ask yourself what it means in the context of a ballot or the forum of debate, which means the app cannot win on the app because app alone is good, but they must answer the question of why negation and adjudication of the app is good. It's a question of what statements you should use to validate the methods for training the app with two discounts. One is the arbitrator just said they've not provided a bright line for what counts as the app, what method is in the form of cooking or sharing recipes, or how the judge should choose between different forms of those, which means you become the arbitrator of who performed or writing the app better. If we got up and share their own recipes, would that be mutually exclusive? You have to decide whose proposed thoughts are better. Process gives us a link to our office because they said that you should intuit what thoughts are better, but that process of intuition is bad because trans people are always already presumed against, because it is impossible for me to explain the scope or magnitude of trans violence, meaning adjudication or the use of the app is violent. The impact is essentialist because they elapse back into personal biases and assumptions that make value statements on individual acts of sharing or community, especially when the one you see is giving both empirical and personal examples of recipe sharing. Second is negation. No stable definition of what recipe sharing is, as a tactic means it's impossible to generate negative ground or link uniqueness because they can shift the app and the two ways to include whatever. When we read in the one that kills clash over revolutionary strategies in terms of the app because we cannot access the recipe sharing in a world where debates over the app are impossible. That is a double bind because either they said we don't have to have debates over the app, so you should just vote negative because the app has already performed, or we are winning offense to why the negation of the app in the first place is bad. Now we're going to the metropolis evidence where our winning of the academy is structured by relation to home family that's structurally transphobic because the nuclear family and the home reproduce precarity, the kicking of trans people out of their homes, weaponization of family values to depict trans people as groomers, the logic of domesticity and the devaluation of trans epistemology are all examples of the way that home produces violence that is proliferated through the university, through the emotional flow of precarity of academic spaces that will always devalue trans ways of living. This the link turns the one to English evidence about the nuclear family. They do not disrupt the nuclear family, they proliferate it because the nuclear family is upheld through a social contract. Your role as a justice to break the social contract by refusing to affirm the one which is also granted uniqueness by the parameters debate, because I've already explained there why negation of the app is trans who relies on transphobic assumptions. The expectation for us to negate the app and to compare the violence of transphobia to the violence of nuclear forces or to the violence described in the one is the link to our case here because it creates the burden of trying to logically explain why transphobia is bad in order to win the round. It's impossible burden that nobody in this room should or could have to do, which makes the question of why the social contract of rejoinder is good in the first place. They dropped our argument of rejoinder specifically, which means we should not have to disprove the details of the app in order to win the debate. Our argument is that there's that having debates over what may be considered a nuclear weapon and how that informs our daily practices requires a social contract of family, because the basic question of negotiating the limits of our love or community for one another. It means you should default negative for when any the app remains attached to academic spaces or archaeopolitics, because there's only a risk that they reinvest in forms of liberalism that produce transphobia in the first place. They definitely link they recreate families as chosen families, which is the link. It's not a link because any attempt to reclaim the families as communal spaces, archaeopolitics. That's 20 England 20. They were the family that chose food combined families were chosen communities sharing food create signs of blood and birth. The impact are all about arguments because when the best performances, the best ideas for liberating people is cool optimism, because it assumes that liberation comes when the judge votes app voting negative to break the social contract outweighs, because it says no to truly optimistic projects was the only thing that can turn us towards revolutionary planning outside the context of this round or this tournament. Now I'm going to turn the app in two ways here. One is the body. Focusing on food and nursing as a site of resistance is bad because it relies on the body as a revolutionary site. They cause bodily hyperscrutiny. That's 20 England 20. What does the person like to eat? What food is home to them? What food formed their bodies? Turn the app on multiple levels. A is transphobic. The idea that we should interrogate how food formed our bodies is one that relies on ideas of narrative coherence of our bodies developing or our bodies developing, which for trans people will always lapse back into bioessentialist notions that uphold dysphoria. For example, having to confront how my body was formed and the way that food formed my body is one that forces me to confront the gender norms that are assigned onto me. B is that it assumes that food should be a revolutionary politic, which is violent towards people with eating disorders who have a precarious relationship to food and their bodies, the one that is not energizing or vitality, which turns the impact debate at the top of the case page. And third is the one is the England evidence, which says, quote, cooking and eating together has an affect in communal force. But the debate evidence says that community is reactive and unhelpful, because it reactive and unhelpful, and in fact does not allow us to energize ourselves, but instead it turns us towards one that has no relationship to life. That was the argument made about contractual obligations to negate the app, or why the contractual obligation to engage in community with them in the first place is one that's bad. The second piece of office is the family. The understanding community is basis for our politics is bad because this is a coercive and contingent social contract. What happens when someone refuses the offer of food? What happens when they cannot offer food to the table or does not want to be a part of the community? They cannot get out of the link by saying that, quote, people get to choose for themselves because A, that is just the status quo, and B, they should have to defend the justifications of their politics, especially when crossface gives us that community sharing food is an exportable method, which means they should have to defend the exportability of the method. The impact is universalization. They assume a universal subject who is able to engage in the social contract of food. The one england evidence says that sharing is a meal of an everyday experience of togetherness, and that the anticipation of food is a shared experience of communing, but that assumption of shared experience around sharing food assumes that there was access to the home in the first place where where there was a table to share food, which is not true when trans people are kicked out of their homes or objects from communal spaces, which means our theory of power outweighs their theory of Buddhism. The Cooper evidence that there's stuff, none of the answers here were responsive to our archaea of the home specifically, and the burden of rejoinder that we critique in the first place. The idea of self does not answer the specificity of the links because they uphold a violent ideal of the self by localizing their politics to the body and to food.
Okay, we have 10. Starting.
cards. It's just case K.
Let me go to the bathroom first.
Where is it?
Just down.
So yeah, there's like one right over there. It's kind of.
You just like turn the corner and it's right there.
Turn left.
Yeah, left. Turn the corner. It's like by the glass wall.
Kind of tucked away.
Left or right?
I got lost looking for it.
Yeah.
Was it where is this?
This debate's awesome because Tyler's like, I never want my writing to be read in debate. Like, nobody should. I wrote my dissertation on something that like would be uncardable on purpose. Like,
I was
Tyler.
literally telling them that. I was just sort of like, I'm a fucking idiot for not doing what Tyler did.
Tyler, you underestimate debaters.
Like, Tyler, you should have shown me your dissertation if you didn't want me to turn it into a card.
literally.
I should have just wrote about fucking pigeons.
I
I thought that, like, I got really into pigeons about 3 or 4 months into working on my thesis, and I was like, Jesus Christ, I should just scrap this and write about pigeons, but I just didn't have the courage. I didn't have the courage to just scrap, like, 8 books. 8 books of work.
But then you know what? I mean, if it's the legal personhood topic, you're fucked. Everybody's gonna be reading those cards.
the animals in nature.
I feel like policy teams are gonna be like, never again. Never will we ever allow for a metaphysical topic.
That's probably true. Like,
It was so good though. It was my favorite topic I ever debated on.
Yeah, no, that shit was awesome. I'm kind of tight that like all these D17s had such a violent reaction to it, and I'm just like, ah man, fuck y'all.
Mm-hmm.
That shit was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Case K, right?
Yep. Everyone good? Appreciate you good?
Yeah.
Though after endorse Hibachi metaphors of nuclear policy, we deconstruct nuclear policy by understanding it as cooking without divorcing the chef from the diner. There are 2 impacts. First is communal warmth. Metaphors create concepts of life and spaces of death. The impact is healing and suffering. This looks like this is an impact in debate which they have dropped that we saw. But out of it, this looks like sharing meals over terror, poetry, and underground cafes, or mutual aid for the Black Panther Party free breakfast program. Second is Buddhist Daka. Suffering is caused by attachment and individualism. Hibachi metaphors solve the root cause of suffering through the reconceptualization and rationality of the parameters argument. They didn't answer our impact trend to their education, which is that it's orientalist in nature and forces Asian debaters to be perfect and provide roles for white debaters, white people on the negative. This is a reason to reject the team. They're mishandling our the argument on the parameters. Our method is not just cooking food, but rather cooking as a metaphor to understand resistance at an epistemological level. The role of the judge is to argue whether this is a valuable form of resistance. This is our England evidence. Default to this because they have no other way to explain how it should theorize epistemology. This arbitrariness is not the brilliance is irrelevant to our argument. It's not the judge can interpret different strategies. Epistemology can be aware of the negative requires this as well. We should have a high standard for this argument. Obviously, the basic questions like what strategies are good and bad are probably key to party formation above all things, which means that the judge can just intuit these things. All the stuff about the app is violent voting negative doesn't solve their essentialization arguments. Our arguments weren't about intuiting against trans people, but rather how we interpret epistemologies, not intuiting against people. But the way we look at scholarship, all their weaponization arguments, they don't apply. We do not weaponize family. Your ballot does not stop taking people out of home because it can affirm good scholarship. We think our scholarship is in line with this because we think that the nuclear family exists because they are focused on the family chosen. Families is better. That's above all the All the stuff about the social construct, group all of that parameters doesn't give uniqueness. That's a non-argument. Your ballot does nothing. They have no alternative that solves chance violence. Voting negative is just a good illustration. That doesn't mean that you've done anything. At worst, it turns their arguments. They're the ones who link to cruel optimism. They haven't answered in our debate. They haven't answered our debate arguments and said that your ballot can do something. All the body focusing stuff driven. Their body argument is not a link to the defender. We're not making an argument about body frequency. We're making an argument how cooking can act as resistance. Ask yourself, why doesn't the ballot solve eating divorce? There's no reason that's true. Obviously, we don't think because their argument is about cooking, not about what we should eat in a particular way, but rather the preparation of food is good. The body argument is one line. Eating disorders are bad, but interrogating relationship is necessary. We turn this since communal care and love is necessary to break down those notions versus toxicity. Also, the app always has a direct answer to the coercion and social contract arguments because community and sharing food is exportable. This means that we can choose community. All the universalism stuff is our universalism is Buddhist in nature. Again, they're dropping our theory of power. Buddhism is true because the science and quantum physics are understanding like universalism is zero. Okay. The topics in permutation, do, each, this goes, drop. That was our Why So 14 card. It says, quote, Marxism and Buddhism operate at different levels and are doing the same thing, but at different levels. End quote. Have a high threshold for distinction between the two. Have a high level between the distinction between the two. This proves that they advocate in spiritual resistance, or they engage in forms. And there's also a sequencing term embedded in their Weissel evidence. Quote, it is imperative to recognize that individual transformation is a prerequisite of social transformation. End quote. Attachment and spirituality are interconnected in the root cause of capitalist desires. Therefore, because the app is a prerequisite to ethical relations that divorce ourselves from desires and entering the party. They oversight political action which privileges the external activity's malevolence. Primary concern in both philosophies and the concern of suffering. Buddhism is concerned with the internal Marxism and the external practice involved in generating suffering in the sense that are mutually complementary. All there's something to it. The overview is wrong. It's not easy to sustain yourself in the world. Not everyone has the luxury of food on the table every night. Austerity politics that cut welfare and genocide all over the world means that we need food. Food is material resistance. Food is practice that is exportable. How does earth as the practice is exportable? No one will become communist if they're all hungry. The party doesn't want to currently vote negative, but we re-theorize racial capitalism. Racism and capitalism are a result of seeing the other. Rishi was explicit about how Buddhism and our framing of that is able to solve boundary forming the app is a permutation warfare for why the app can challenge capitalism. Think about how agricultural supervision is required for capitalist societies to develop and function. Buddhism is just thinking yourself out of prison. This is racist. Buddhism requires acknowledging that it's a prerequisite to action. Austerity farming is a negative argument. It's the reason why we should engage the community mutual aid argument. There are the ones who kill us follow businesses. Think about Tokytown and Chinatown, for examples. We need ethnic enclaves in order for those things to exist in the first place. No presumption. We're making permutation arguments. Obviously, that makes no sense, especially when they have dropped the case overview. Food is not about victim blaming. Buddhism is about putting down the onus of the community, not the individual. Everyone should be helping one another. This doesn't mean that they straight turn the energy. We're telling you that communist work is hard work. That means that you need to vote affirmative to feed people. People are clicking now as an app argument. All these union arguments are flow affirmative. I think the difference is that they need to link to argument all the reasons why the perm works. It's really expressive how unions need a space where they can eat together in order to advocate and learn about the communism in the first place. Otherwise, there's no organization happening, which means you have to revisit the localism link. Group of the localism of the community formation is good for any issue. People definitely create kinship. This question about how should one relate in a community. Cross-ex proves the double line, and smaller tables are still in one space. Everyone is in it. They are the ones who create violent organizing by excluding those and self-policing is not an argument. Love is essential, but accountability matters, and this is the reason why you should vote on the permutation. The Snelling link, it flows affirmative. Sounds multiculturalism is bad because of culture erasure. It proves that maximum our impact, but we're learning how in our round this sharing is good. Obviously, Jefferson is not it's not going to steal our recipes, but rather active sharing is uniquely good for community formation. They said that people can choose the Buddhist party. This is a permutation warning. Even if we lose, you can still vote to do both. The Ramadan stuff is not an app argument. There's Buddhist, Islam, Islam, fast speaks in the U.S. dining halls in the morning demonstrate that there can be community. Affect doesn't turn our link arguments. This argument boils down to TikTokers will co-opt our recipes. That's not violence. Also, not the affirmative. The alternative is worse. Buddhists do not explore one, and they said no perms in the method debate. We get permutations, speed test, competition, anything that means that they actually just agree with the app. They're the ones who kick the brown party out. The people, we're the Buddhists, therefore we are out of the party. Also going to start at zero. This demonstrates Buddhist genocide arguments. We will result in a political party, and now we will engage in the vanguard party who kicks Buddhists out and burns down temples, and all the mutual aid stuff doesn't work. It serves people, it flows up. They don't feed people. This was in cross-sex. This creating the space for organizing requires food and energy in order to organize, which means that they're at the wrong starting point.
They don't serve people. They don't feed people.
Cross-sex said they don't serve people.
And every example they're giving is a reason for the perm, not a reason the alt is good.
I'm 7:30.
I'm sorry. I have to be done. Sorry. Okay, we're gonna set up.
or just case cap? Anyone not ready?
Me. I'm not ready.
Okay.
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 Hold on. Okay.
They lost this debate when 2 AF speeches in a row dropped the critique of the burden of rejoinder. It's a TKO. We are winning a case that says it was undesirable to negate the AF in the first place because the social contract that they have offered in this debate round is one that we should refuse. The expectations for us to negate the sharing of food and community, the idea that community based around family is good, are all expectations of the home and the family that trans people are abject from. Instead, you should vote negative to break the social contract of negation in this debate round. Our theory of the homes is that there is no redemption of the home and community, not found families, not community, not new communal forms or on new tables, because in this space it is impossible for us to articulate transphobia in ways that are legible. Conceded that people within debate presume against trans people before we can open our mouths, which including in communities that are supposed to sustain us, which means that you should vote negative. We run any risk of attorney because any doubt you have about voting negative comes from the fact that we cannot and should not have to explain why transphobia outweighs the impact to their communities or practices of Buddhism. Remember, rejecting the burden of rejoinder means even if they win that the app is good, you still vote negative because we should not have to disprove the words of case, just that there is some ways in which they perpetuated violence, including by asking us to negate them. To the 2 error cannot win on the outcome that is good, nor are there not ways. You should filter this debate through the moment and crosses that they cannot walk back when they say that it is bad to offer a metric of comparison, and instead the judge should quote intuit who is better. I reacted to this and I looked at you because I wanted you to remember that moment. Ryan extended it. The 1 ear conceded it. It's bad. It's a model of the social contract that we have refused. We do not agree for you to intuit whether or not we are embodying a better method than because intuiting whether or not the app is good or bad proliferates transphobic biases. Conceded the trans people are object in spaces like debate about impact and strategy comparison, which is our link to the criticism and negation of their model, including that alone is a word specific to this debate for why you should not hold us to negate the app. We are winning a prior question that comes before: was the app good? Is Buddhism true? Etc. Because the prior question you should ask is: was asking us to negate this app by telling the judge to intuit who won violent? The answer is yes. It also turns the app more broadly. Think about it, i.e. if either team shared a recipe from their culture, then the judge would devote to vibes or intuition, which is structurally likely to reproduce white supremacy because we are all raised in a white supremacist world, which means that they cannot solve their own impacts. If we win, that this critique is true, the social contract of their debate model is violent. It turns both planks of solvency. One is community, organizing community around chosen family is bad. That is what we ready link to on case. They are assuming that we are making critique of the nuclear family. We are making critique of the way that chosen family structures replicate and reproduce forms of the nuclear family myth. When they rely on the same structures of familiar relations that the nuclear family does. One easy cross-ex explicitly said we can kick people we don't like out of our table. I can guarantee you trans people are not well liked in most communal spaces, including queer ones, which is why there is so much anti-trans violence in queer spaces and why turfism is such a popular rhetoric, because it takes up radical language and community to abject trans people from that. Second, Buddhist attachment turned by all of the arguments about the illegibility of transphobia. They try to make an understanding of the world that is reliant on a scientific quantification. We've impact turned that. They can't overcome suffering because it is impossible for us to explain the suffering of trans people through scientific means, and it's bad to try. Parameters is the tiebreaker because it proves the app does not depart from its status quo, and the negation of it is bad. It isn't racist. We've turned to the Orientalist argument I did an example above, and a drop essentialism impacts is intuiting whether or not the app is good relies on assumptions about which impacts matter more, which lapses in a transphobic or racist distinctions. When the judge decides whether or not the app is good, means they don't mean our interpretation, because it's impossible to decide whether or not your endorsing of recipe metaphors was good when compared to someone else's endorsing of recipe metaphors, which means the counter interpretation that they had just did not answer this argument in the first place. 2 ways the app produces transphobic violence in the debate space. When the 2 are stands up to say Buddhism is good, food creates community. Remember, we've impact turned a world where we have to prove that we outweigh. One is body focus. Ryan pulled a bunch of lines. They said that focus on food forces us to ask, or enjoins us to sort of ask questions like, what foods created this person's body, which is bad and it produces dysphoria. They assume that food is revolutionary, but they've conceded that's violent towards people's eating disorders, precarious relationships to food, and then their bodies for that impact on the kind of communities that they create, because those communities do not energize us. They turn us back towards something that siphons life out of us to produce life for others. The second word is the family. That is the work I explained above. They say that people should kind of have a shared experience around access to food. Conceded that trans people are abject from even spaces like found families, which means that all their words do not answer the rest of that takes out the rest of the flow. Go to the cap. I'm gonna clean it up. Conceding the permutations of the test competition, which means that they cannot weigh offense against us. They have no offense here. The two are that for food is necessary, and by Buddhism is scientifically true to vote at. Framing issue. Both of these things are not unique observations about the status quo. So they vote on presumption. Plus, every time two says anything like that, remember that those are links to our offense because we've said that forced negation is bad. Ryan kind of wrecked them in crossings about why and how those things are non-unique. They cannot spell out, and you should not evaluate the debate as such because we're winning it insofar as they spill out. They create notions of the community that we have impact on. They're just not getting it. Our argument is that chosen families are also bad. Takes out every argument they have. The rest of the means they don't get to go over the permutations, anything other than a theoretical test of competition. But I will extend one link at the bottom that impact turns the rest of the research. They say that we need food. That holds trans people hostage to a world that wants us dead and extracts value from us. It's how the world gets the same. Life for some, vitality for some, energy for some, relies on the death of others, which is proven. They say things like community is key to stop eating disorders. What are you fucking talking about? That's not how eating disorders work. It does prove that they lead to victim blaming when people cannot have their eating disorders resolved by engaging in communities. They're also dropping the theory of power that trans people are abjection from communities. So if they're right, then they solve eating disorders. They can't do it for trans people, and you fucking vote negative. They say Buddhism without putting the locus on the community. This is the link. Putting the locus on the community to care is a bad way to solve because trans people cannot be included from those communities. Finally, I'll extend one and see Cotter. Horizontal structures allow affect and love. Those create self-pleasing, conceited, not a word on it because people ask themselves, were my actions worthy of love, which orients us back towards a position of system or normativity. When you come together around a space at the table, that space at the table is already violent. It impacts one's kinship and relating with the communities, and it demonstrates that they don't have any offense left. Like, they just thought we weren't going to go for this, but...
Yeah, we have 4:35. Okay, starting now. It's just the case. I like to clean up some stuff back at the bottom, but anything relevant to that will be included. Okay. All good? Jefferson? Okay.
They have not answered our fundamental argument about why you cannot vote on this parameter rejoinder argument. We have said that it is Orientalist to hold nation debaters to such a standard where they have to be perfect in the face of any refutation. This is exactly what the negative has done in this debate when they said that they have critiqued the burden of rejoinder. They do not have to rejoin the app. The comparison is that what does it look like for the affirmative in this debate? What it means is they have to be absolutely perfect. They can they disagree with one part of the app and then absolutely zero all the rest of it. They are saying now that they can ignore all the Buddhist arguments, ignore all the cookie arguments, and find just one line in our card, the only line in our card about nuclear family, and then say, and one classic example about it, and then say and win a disadvantage to that argument. I'll have link defense to that later in the flow, but this is exactly the kind of thing that holds Asian debaters to a higher standard. Our whole point is that this is an example about labor where they're forced to be a mono minority in the debate, which is an epistemological argument that you must reject. We are controlling with the role of the judge in this debate. It is to form an epistemology. They themselves have said that identity politics was bad on the K, and then shifted back to this argument, and now shifted again, which demonstrates the fact that they're trying to put they're trying to engage us in within these arguments. Our whole point is that it makes it impossible for us to be apt, which demonstrates that the only question of this debate should be whether or not our scholarship will be good at the level of what performance is. They have not answered our Orientalism argument. Have just said like a one-line response later on in the 2-hour routines. We uniquely access offense in this debate, and I'll do an impact calculus in comparison later on. But impact calculus later on. But remember the key comparative here between our offense and their offense is solvency. You cannot solve any of their arguments. They have zero uniqueness for any of their arguments. They have zero solvency for it and zero way to solve our impacts. But we have a way to solve our impacts. Our impacts by not imposing the burden upon us and voting after that is a solvency of their arguments. That there's no way that refusing to rejoin solves any of their arguments about trans violence in debate. Even if you vote negative, the arguments that they're saying about how people do not want to be included at a particular table, and even if their arguments are all true, that it continues even after the debate. But you can, in this debate, remedy the expectation for Asian debaters to go above and beyond and become perfect. They dropped our uniqueness argument about how Asian Americans are uniquely pathologized in post-COVID and anti-Asian policies that marked us as toxic and infectious to translate to culture and food, which is the reason for why our app at an epistemological level is something that interrogates against this. Also, the 2 hours to respond to any of our alt arguments about how erasure of culture is important. This means that even if you think that they should be rejoined against it, that rejoinder is an erasure, which links to all of our CAPK offense about how that form of erasure is violent, and how that erasure takes place is violent along forms of genocide, which links to all of our CAPK offense. The argument about now they have no defense to Orientalism. The only answer is about rejoinder and scholarship. Remember, they hold the presumption that Eastern knowledge is inherently transphobic because of one line without understanding. This refunds the exact same structures they critique and turns the negative the ballot's ability to solve trans violence, because only the app is a possible transformation by creating new forms of relationality, which means only the app says uniqueness. Now, importantly, they do not have a pick argument. They've just said they do not have to rejoin the app. This means that any risk of our offense, external from all this Orientalism reasons to reject the argument, is a reason for why you can vote. It's a reason for why you can vote out. Extend the app at one communal warmth metaphors create spaces of life in life of death. The impact is healing and suffering. This looks like the Black Panther Party using mutual aid to form free breakfast programs, etc., which is outside of debate. They have no way to externalize any politics, so which means that if you even buying a little bit about externalizing politics from the CAPK, the only way to do that is by voting AF, because there's nothing you can do by voting negative that gives us any politics to do outside of the debate space, but voting AF does give you the ability to do that, and the bar was on the floor for our thesis. They've dropped, again, Buddhist the argument about there's zero Buddhism wrong card the whole debate. The CAPK argument they were making reading on the other page was just that some amount of imperialism is wrong and that our stuff is incorrect. But we've read a piece of evidence in the 1AC that says that Buddhism is true. It says that quantum physics means that there's quantum entanglement across the universe, as well as that this is something that's replicable, which means that Buddhism structures all balance, and importantly, it structures otherization, which is our whole claim, the whole debate. This means at an impact level, we are turning their offense, because trans violence is structured through otherization. It is structured through notions of identity. Buddhism deconstructs all of those things because it says there is no self and there is no identity. There is no identity, which deconstructs all of their offense. It's just premised on community. It's premised on self. It is premised on otherization, which is you must vote out, because endorsing the hibachi metaphors of policy is essential to solve all of those things. Now on the argument about the rejoinder and undesirability is irrelevant, because our whole point was not that home was good, our home was good, or the chosen family is good, or what our evidence says, quote, the nuclear family can create new forms of kinship, and their impact to the new forms of kinship was about the chosen family was that it results in the nuclear family. So this whole distinction about not being a critique of the nuclear family does not get them anywhere, because our whole point was never that home was good or family is good, but that a chosen family is able to reorient kinship structures, which means that only we access some amount of solvency. They might have an impact in this debate, but they do not have a solvency mechanism for that. But what you do know is that if there is any hope of kinship for any people who face violence, like trans people or people with eating disorders, the only way that can happen is if you vote out, and voting negative does absolutely nothing, and then that is what you start about. Now, link defense, there's absolutely no link to this cross-six argument. We never said presume against people. Our whole argument was about intuiting against scholarship. Remember the cross-six moment about intuition? I said we should intuit against logics, which we're trying to define what nuclear forces is, not against people. We're not, when you vote for us, you're not saying that they are intuitively worse debaters than us or intuiting against them, but just saying that in the debate, the arguments are something that you are intuiting against. It's a reason for why under our rule, the judge about scholarship, you must prioritize their epistemology, which is a total no-link argument which solves all their offense. And remember, our offense comes prior. On an impact level, our offense turns all theirs. And voting negative does nothing externally. If you want to have any chance of external offense, you vote for us. And if you think both people access violence in debate, voting out is the only value you can get.
Good video.